Hello, everyone. I'm Gemma Star, and welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. Heart Warriors is a series I was inspired and guided to do thanks to my energetic connection with Kata Judah. Literally, I woke up one morning and knew, oh, I'm going to interview 100 men about their journey into the heart. I better start a YouTube channel. And literally, that's how it was. For those who don't know, Kata Judah is the sacred masculine site in Central Australia, very close to Uluru, our sacred feminine site. So what I'm here to do is to give a platform to men so they can share their journey into the heart, their healing journey, their highs, their lows. How did they spiral on up, and what can they now share with the other men watching? And of course, us women who are walking right there by their sides. Their tools, their practices, insights, knowledge, wisdom, their stories, their experience. Each man is very unique and brings a beautiful wisdom and insights to the series. And my guest today is a fellow Aussie, and his name is John Templeton. Now, John is a master coach and healer. He's also a published author. He's a Guinness World Record holder, which I've no idea what for, but I'll make sure that we find out. And he's also ex-Special Forces. So really excited to be hearing about John's story into the heart. Enjoy. Hello, John Templeton. Welcome to Heart Warriors. How are you today?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And thank you for having me on your show as well.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Now, before I forget, I've done a little intro with all your labels, but I don't want to forget asking you, what are you World Guinness Record holder in?
I did a gymnastics exercise called a muscle up for 24 hours. So just as many repetitions as possible in a 24-hour period.
Goodness, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Any risk of losing that title?
Someone challenged it recently and claimed that they beat it, but it was unofficial, meaning they didn't have like official staff there or judges. So, look, it's a pretty solid effort. So I mean, maybe one day someone might, but it's a big job to organize the staff, to put the whole event on. So someone would have to be very committed to do it.
Right. Awesome. So let's find out a bit about you, John. When you take away your labels of coach and healer and author and everything else, who is the man inside?
Yeah, I guess it's the same as everyone. When you strip them right back, there is just a soul underneath, a very pure soul. So how far do you want to strip it back? Because that's the truth. If you take away all of the ways we identify, then there's nothing. There's a soul. And then every layer we put on that, our beliefs, our thoughts, the clothes we wear, that kind of builds our identity and our character. So yeah, beneath all of my labels, beneath all of your labels is a soul.
I love that. Getting right back to source there. Beautiful. All right, John, let's see what shaped you into the man you are today. Your childhood, what was the major hurdle that you had to overcome?
In childhood, I I think during childhood you don't realize it's a hurdle, and it's later in life where you look back and you're like, that really shaped me. Um, the biggest thing was the contrast between my mum and my dad. So neither was right or wrong or good or bad. I just felt loved from my dad and I didn't feel loved from my mum. And when you break that down, it was my dad did everything for me. I lived with my mum because they separated early, and I lived with my mum. Now she had her hands full, 3 kids, working. She had us full time. So she was stressed, her energy was split. And so for her to give me specific love and attention was almost impossible for her, right? But then I contrast that to time with my dad, and my dad, whenever he had us, he wasn't working. So we had his full attention, me and my brother. And he would pick us up from school. He would have food prepared. Everything would be done for us. Clothes would be folded on the bed. every one of our needs were attended to so intricately that it's like, oh, that's what love is. But that was a false idea of love as well. They were both, neither of them were true love. And so the contrast between that and really then growing up with this idea that I should have all of my needs met all the time and not really have to do anything for it, that has been a big challenge. But also, in order to get my mum's attention, I had to be a high achiever. I always had to do something incredible, like I say put on a show, but what I mean by that is like excel at sports or, draw a painting or a picture that was impressive. So I also built this high achiever personality, which led to the Guinness World Record. And getting to a point of realizing that that's a behavior pattern that's not authentic. It is a wound. So also working through that has been a huge part of my life as well. So I don't know if that fully answered your questions about childhood, but I realize now what my childhood created, and I'm doing the work of undoing that and getting back into my center.
Now, I love this, John, and let's explore, if we can, this as you called it, a high achiever child into an adult. So for the men that are watching that can identify with your journey, what would you say to those men? How important, I mean, is high achievement a bad thing? Like, at what point does it become something that you have to unwind and assess?
Yeah, it's the it's the horse before the cart analogy. So if you are achieving highly as a byproduct of doing what you love, no worries, because it doesn't need then external recognition for your achievements because you love doing it. But if you are if you're putting the cart before the horse and you are doing things because secretly inside, like this little part of you gets validation from your achievements or gets, you feel loved or gives you connection with other people, then that I would say is an unhealthy pattern, and it would do to undo it. Now that doesn't mean you'll stop being successful. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. You'll more than likely go through a period of who the fuck am I? Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, go for
Okay.
it.
And then you'll start to, because you're a high achiever, you know how to work hard, and you've got all these great attributes. You can now use them, but from a place of doing what you love, as opposed to I need to do this to get loved.
I like that. Bingo.
Yeah, yeah.
Such an important distinction. Thank you
Mm.
for that. So how does a man start? Where does he start? If he can recognize this in himself, he's like, oh, that could be me. Okay, what do I do?
Well, that's the first step, is being honest with yourself. Like, is that me? And there'll be symptoms and signs to look for, which is um obviously if you've got a track record of success, look at what benefits that success has given you, and check in to see if it's given you some kind of validation or some kind of feeling of worthiness. And so that's the first thing. Then admitting it is I would say admitting it takes more courage than putting on a brave face and continuing to do it. So you really have to be truly courageous to admit it. Like, fuck, it's an addiction. It's an addiction. I've got an addiction to achieving highly because it's meeting my needs. It provides me with something. So that would be the next thing. And then the third thing is, well, what am I going to do about it? Okay, I've got this thing that's happening. Because a lot of the time is the pattern that you play, it feels like you. So you're like, who am I without this? And that's fucking scary. Who am I without John the high achiever? And that's the unknown. But this is the pathway to authenticity. By removing these layers and patterns and addictions that we have, we get back to our center. And this is why I say that personal development is okay, but spiritual development is where the gold lies, because we actually get beyond the mind and we get beyond the personality and we get back to the core. So yeah, for the men out there, or women, there are a lot of women that are high achievers as well. They wear the same mask. If that's you, it's, own it, admit it, and you can go through my free course, which is Discover Your Authentic Self. We talk more about it through there. but it's a journey of peeling back layers, stepping into the unknown. But the beautiful thing is your high achiever pattern can only get this result. You're limited to one result. If you remove those patterns and behaviors and become more of who you actually are, there's unlimited potential and possibility. So then you have the world at your fingertips. Whereas if you just keep playing the same pattern on repeat, high achiever over and over again, you're going to end up exactly where you started. And you might feel like you're getting new achievements, but you're not actually progressing, and your soul's not actually evolving. You're just repeating patterns.
Fascinating. Can you remember back to when you were unraveling this and give us a specific example of something that you recognized and let go of?
Yeah, the Guinness World Record would be that was the end of that was the start of that was the end of the start and the start of the end, you could say, because I achieved it and all of these people were there celebrating, but I felt empty. I was like, ugh. And you know what? This is some examples for high achievers is you won't celebrate your wins very often. It's just like, oh yeah, I've done that. What's next? You're always on to the next thing, and you don't take time to really sit in how truly well you've done or amazing you've done. So that Guinness World Record for me was the sign I needed. Like, this is no longer fulfilling. It's like empty fulfillment. Yeah, I think that's the example you might have been.
Yeah, brilliant example. Thank you. All right, let's move into adulthood. So, ex-special forces, do you want to give us a bit of a background on that? What were you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to clarify, I was a special forces physical training instructor. So I finished my physical training instructor course and I got top student because that's what high achievers do. And because of that, I was posted to the special forces camp. So that was my very first posting as a junior physical training instructor was to the special forces camp. And so at the start, I just did the fitness program for the support crew for the special forces. And then as my time progressed with the unit, it was one NZ SAS group, my role changed and I finished as the physical trainer for, they're known as the commandos. And so it was just building out the fitness programs, meeting with the commanding officer or the OC, officer commanding, and really mapping out a plan for what was going to serve that unit the best to excel in their job.
Right. Now, excuse my ignorance, but is this the army?
Yes, it is a branch of the army. Yes, when I was in New Zealand. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I thought you're Aussie. Sorry. So New Zealand. Great. Anyway, we're all cousins.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I want to explore a bit about the army, please. What's your opinion of how it shapes men?
You know what? That is a really amazing question, and I've pondered this a lot as well, coming from it. For me personally, it saved my life, really. It gave me a platform to succeed. So there are obviously levels of consciousness in life and tiers of consciousness. And the army, if you have you ever heard of Claire Graves or spiral dynamics at all? Okay. So it is, in his model, it's the army sits at level 4, level 3 and 4. And for me, when I was at level 3, to move into level 4, it gave me structure, it gave me stability in my life, it gave me objectives. I was like a lost kid, smoking a lot of drugs, drinking a lot of alcohol, hanging around with the wrong people. My friends were committing suicide. Like, it was not a beautiful existence. And so there was one night, right? I was very high, marijuana, and I called my dad, and my dad lives in England. That's where my dad lives. That's where I kind of grew up. Moved to New Zealand when I was 10. And I talked to my dad on the phone, and because I had my dad on this pedestal, like, you know, he met all my needs, he was this great guy, I really respected him. And I was on the phone and I was high, and I couldn't remember the sentence he had just said. Like, I was an embarrassment. And I remember getting off the phone going, there's my dad who's up here, and here's me down here. Like, this is not okay. I'm letting him down. And so I made a decision that night that I would fix my life. I was like, I don't know how, but I'm going to fix my life. The very next day, I talked to a friend who I hadn't spoken with in probably about 12 months. And he said he was joining the army. And I said, no. I was like, I'll join with you. And I just said, I'll join with you. And he said to me, he's like, no, you won't. You take drugs. You're a druggie. You won't do it. I said, give me the number. I'll get off the phone. I called them. So got off the phone. I called the army straight away and I enrolled. That very day I enrolled. I didn't even tell my mum. And I was so excited. I was so excited. And mum took me then to do the aptitude testing, to the fitness testing, all those things, and I ended up joining the army. And the army saved my life. The best thing was there was structure, there was routine, there were standards. Taking drugs, drinking, my standards were like, who can drink the most alcohol, who can stay up the latest. Like the expectations of the peer group were forming me. And so when you get to the military, you've got pretty good standards like fitness testing, navigation, even how to handle a firearm. It's just like the values they instill: courage, commitment, integrity, and 3CI: courage, commitment, integrity, comradeship. It's like they install those in you, and they're pretty good values, right? So very, very beneficial. However, it also indoctrinates you into that. And again, it becomes another pattern. So I was a soldier. I was a really good soldier, but it was still a pattern. It was my mind. It wasn't, my soul wasn't speaking to me. So I say the best day of my life was joining the army. The next best was leaving the army, kind of thing. So I left at the right time. So what I think the military does for men, it provides them with brotherhood. It provides them with these beautiful, incredible experiences, beautiful friendships. But it also indoctrinates them into a specific level of thinking. And most soldiers, when they leave the military, they can't survive. A lot of suicide, a lot of depression. And the reason is because they're locked in this level 4 thinking. And there's not much support for soldiers to transition out. And so they just become like these robots, and it messes them up. It really messes them up. So it's got its pros and cons, like everything. The ones that do the best are the ones that are wise enough and have the malleability and flexibility to actually change. Because if you've got that military mindset in a civilian world, then you become actually quite useless. There's you could become a security guard or something. The ones that really do well are the ones with the entrepreneurial mindset, which is in spirodynamics, that's level 5. So the ones that are entrepreneurial step into level 5, they transcend the level 4 thinking, and they do really well because they've completed level 4 and now their consciousness is to that of the entrepreneur. So they've still got everything they've got plus the next level. So they're the ones that do really well.
I don't know, but I would imagine that when in the assessment whether to, with men to enroll in the army, if they are programmable and, would be a major factor for, for the intake. John, what can you say to men, ex-service men who are struggling with this integration into society?
Well, first I would say talk to me, because I can help you from experience and the knowledge of, that's what I do, right, for a job, is help people integrate. You're going to have to go through a period of discomfort, and that means even letting go of your friends. Like, my military friends are still my friends, but they're not who I hang out with now. Why? Different values, different way of looking at the world. And so to really grow, it's very, very uncomfortable, because you have to move into that space of the unknown, letting go of friendships, letting go of everything you've known. But the more you cling on to that, the more you're just going to repeat cycles. So I would say get ready for a lot of discomfort. Definitely move into personal development space, and really start understanding who you are. Really start understanding who you are, what your patterns of behavior are, what what your emotions mean, really start to master yourself. And that's going to, being tomorrow, you could wake up and decide to be a completely different person. You could change your name, change your hair, change your clothes, and go about a different way of living. It's like we can really do that. And so,
I did it.
yeah, right. The
Yeah.
world is our oyster, and it's far more malleable than people think. So I would say, yeah, like explore what that would look like. Explore the possibility and potentiality of what you're capable of, not what you've been, but what you can become.
Yeah, this is great. And so, John, what about, because I imagine when men are, and women, but we're talking about men, are considering joining the army, the military, they're not thinking about what happens when I finish and I come out. So, have you got any advice for maybe young men who are thinking, contemplating an army or a military career about, thinking maybe a little further ahead?
This is a double-edged sword because I do love thinking ahead and planning ahead, but I also like living in the moment and letting my life be guided by grace. And so, I had no plan going in, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. So I would say that follow your follow your growth and your joy, not what's comfortable or safe. And that will lead you maybe into the military, and then at some point it will lead you out of the military. um it really is this: if you can make your decisions based on joy and love, then do that. Just follow that everywhere. If that takes you into the military, go and do it. For me, absolutely, shooting guns, blowing things up, hiding in the bush, like, yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point where I was like, I outgrew a lot of my instructors, and then I had to wait periods of time, and then I had people in charge of me that I didn't agree with the way they were leading, and so then I was like, it's time. You just know when it's time. So I have changed a lot. In the military, we plan everything down to like the smallest detail, and now I leave a lot up to grace. So I would, yeah, it's a bit of a conflict, but I would just if you feel like doing it, do it. And then when you feel like leaving, leave. But if you put yourself in a position like a lot of my friends have, where they have kids, they have mortgages, and now they feel like they can't leave because they've got a secure job and all these things, I would, I appreciate the security of a job. Believe me, as an entrepreneur, the job security is something that is, sometimes you want that. The But for me, the most important thing on earth is the development of the soul. It is the growth and development of the soul. And if you do not allow your soul to grow and develop because you've mentally locked yourself into a career, I would just find and figure out a way to allow your soul to keep growing. And by staying in the same job with the same people doing the same things, you're not going to get that.
This is fascinating, John. And what just came to mind then is it when we're talking about men? So a man can't allow his soul to grow. Is that when depression comes in?
Yes, is the short answer to that. I feel like, would you like to talk about depression?
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Sounds
something
like you'd like to.
yeah. I mean, I've experienced it firsthand. I'm not sure if you've seen my posts about it recently.
But obviously it's meant to come up. So wonderful.
Yeah. In a nutshell, I believe depression is when your expectations don't meet your reality. So if you're watching this, like, expectations up here, reality down here, that gap is disappointment, right? That's what you expected. This is what happened. Disappointment. Now, the bigger the gap, the more disappointed. The more consistent, like the longer you maintain that gap, this is how life should be. If you hear yourself, saying the word should, or even shouldn't, those are both expectations. And the more that gap is there, the more disappointed you'll become. And over time, that disappointment turns into low self-worth. It turns into depression. It turns into I'm really not good enough and I suck. And all of this negative self-talk comes in. And most people get used to that and they just think that's who they are, but it's not. They are not in their authenticity. They're not in their center. And so I knew all of this, and I still, even as a coach for many years, I still fell into a depressive state because I was covering it up with success. I was covering it up with pseudo success. I was covering it up with money. I had all this money that I was making, and I was able to hide the fact that beneath that, I was a bit dark at the world. I had resentments. I was disappointed. I'd let myself down. So kind of tying this into the military as well, and what we were just talking about is, yes, if you tie yourself into a career, and because your soul wants to expand, it wants to expand, and if you lock yourself into a career, this is a generality or a generalization, but most careers do not allow your soul to expand. So you might progress in your career, but are you following your soul's calling? Like if you're not doing that, I believe that well, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing on earth? You're surviving. If you are not doing that, you're in survival mode. And so, yeah, I do feel that if you lock yourself into a career and you're not following your joy and your bliss and your soul's calling, I don't think it would lead to depression. But what it does, depression's sitting there. It is ready for people to feel, but nobody likes to admit it. So they mask it. They mask it with pretending. They pretend everything's fine. They pretend they're happy. They mask it with money. They mask it with drugs. They mask it with alcohol. They mask it with overtraining. A high achiever is masking deep levels of feeling unworthy. That's why they have to achieve so much, because deep down they carry shame that they're not good enough. And they might not even know it. In fact, they don't know it. They don't know it, because if they knew it, there would be cracks. Cracks would begin to show. So deep shame leads to an overcompensation in pride, which is high achievement, proud, success. And most people are on this yin yang roller coaster of running away from the parts of themselves that are not good enough and overcompensating to be accepted, to be loved, to be good enough. And I'm not sure how we got there, but linking it to depression in the military is like, you can keep that cycle going and you will avoid depression, because if you keep overcompensating with money, I did it with money, with women. If you keep overcompensating, putting on a mask, even women with the beautification of their bodies, why do they do that? Because deep down, they don't feel good enough as they are, right? So whenever you're pushing towards success, it is because deep down, there is a deep feeling of shame, a deep feeling of unworthiness. And so you can mask that. Now, if you take off the high achiever mask, if you take off all of the beautification of a woman, or I like the word beauty, so that's not the right word, but like the covering up insecurities with artificialness, if you take all of that away, this is the positive aspects that we're trying to build to overcompensate for the negative aspects. If you take all of that positive away, you're left just with the negative. And that is when someone will eventually experience depression. Because then all you're left with was, well, like, I'm not good enough, I'm shit, I'm unworthy, low self-belief, low self-esteem. So people don't let themselves feel that. They just keep moving towards the positive so they can continue feeling worthy. But what you really need to do, if you want to feel whole, is take off the mask, step one, and then you're going to fall into this hole of discomfort and shit, and you're going to have to face the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of shame there, there's a lot of unworthiness there. And then you come to terms with, well, that's not me either. I learned that in childhood. I learned that, I wasn't good enough because my mum wasn't there for me when I clicked my fingers. And you realize that's a lie. So both of these things are lies. The mask is a lie, but also the deep shame is a lie. And then you end up in your center, which is, I'm just me. I'm whole as I am. All of these beliefs I had about what love was, what I had to do in life, my definitions of success, all of that dissolves. And then you're left with yourself. And then you can do what you love. But until you get to that point, you're going to keep chasing. It's like a carrot and a stick, right? The pain of shame is a stick that hits you, and the carrot of success is dangled in front of you. And so everybody's either moving towards this carrot of success, of money, of, pseudo happiness, I call it, because it's externally driven, or they're being hit by the stick and they're feeling unworthy, they're feeling down, they're feeling contracted, they're feeling not good enough, they're a people pleaser. So until both of those are neutralized, neutralization is coming into center, that's when we can be joyous from the inside out, because we're no longer controlled by the external stick or the external carrot.
This is so good, John. And I mean, it's just this awareness, isn't it, of the programming of as you said, are we, doing everything for our parents, for society, for the system? We're born into this, how things should be, as you said, the American dream, that, if you have a house and a car and a boat and, beautiful wife, you should be happy, right? And many men have that, and then they're like, well, I'm not happy. So are you directing this to those men, and do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, and the work I do is absolutely around this. Also, it's not just for men. There are the women that seem to have it all as well, and they're not happy either. You cannot be sustainably joyous. I like the word joy. I don't like the word happy, because happy can be kind of transient. But yeah, you cannot really be joyous, fulfilled, inspired, in love with life, in love with who you are, whilst you're playing out the positive negative dynamic, or chasing success and covering things up, or shrinking and staying small. You can't. So yeah, this is the great work of coming back to who you are and true authenticity.
So how does a man who is in this situation, I mean, say, for example, he's got a family, 3 kids, obviously young kids, still needs to put them through school and consider his family, which, when you have children, you obviously committed to them for usually for 18 years. What if he's saying, I built this empire now, I can't just let it go and, find out who I am? What steps have you got for him to come into, to find his authenticity without maybe neglecting his what he sees as commitments?
Yeah, first thing is, his commitments are, obviously to his children is true. There's a commitment there. However, let's break it down. Is you staying in a job, unhappy with a life built on crap, is that the best role model for your kids? Let me give you an example. In the military, this is one of my favorite stories, was one of my instructors. He had 3 kids, wife, had a very stable job, was very well known in the industry. And they said, this is not what life is meant to be. This is horse crap. And the kids were, I think the youngest was 3. I think they were about 3, 5, and 7, around that age group. And they said, screw it. They sold every single position they had. And all they did, they were allowed one backpack. Carry on luggage, right? No checked bags. And they booked a one-way ticket. And they just said, this is how you raise children. It's not through some schooling or, system that's been built. They wanted to teach them about the world, and they wanted to show them what was really out there, not turn them into little robotic kids that have their genius and their uniqueness and their authenticity. You get your authenticity beaten out of you as a kid, at school, when you start a new job. You have to conform, and conformity is the opposite of your true expression. So that's what he did. So, can I give someone steps? sure, I could make some up, but really I would just inspire you to have a deep reflection on, are you living the life that, are you living a comfortable life, or are you living an expansive life? And then you're going to be faced with the fear of, oh fuck, what are people going to think? What am I going to do for money? What da, 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 da. And that's where you have to come into the doing the work of trusting, doing the work of moving. Fear is the biggest thing. Stops everyone doing everything, whether they even know it or not, and it controls you. And so I did a post the other day, you can either build courage, and that can help you overcome fear, or you can remove the expectations you have on what might happen, the consequences. Be okay with those consequences, and then the fear melts. And so if we can melt away those fears, just step into being guided by grace, again, you step into an unlimited potential of opportunity. Do you know, I interviewed a guy, check this out. I interviewed a guy called Daniel Swellow, Suello. He lived without money, without earning a dollar, a cent, and without spending a cent for 15 years. So he didn't even spend a cent for 15 years. He left his corporate job, and he had some money in his, some coins in his pocket, went to a phone booth, rung up his corporate job and said, hey, I quit, put the money on top of the phone booth and just said, I'm done with money, I'm out. Lived 15 years. So he lived in a cave a lot of the time, like the beautiful, mountains behind you, but he was in, I think, Utah in the US. And he said he never in 15 years went hungry, not once. And he told me there were two parts of his story that really stood out. One time he was walking down the road, and he said this was the first time ever where he was like, I'm getting a little bit hungry now, and there's no sign of anyone in sight. If you've seen those big highways in America, they just go on forever. And he started to worry. Fear started to come up. And then he got to the point where he's like, there's no point in worrying. Worrying is just a waste of time, so I'm just going to surrender. I'm just going to surrender, and I'll trust that, I'll live. Worst case, I'll go hungry, but I'll live. And he said the moment he let go of it, he actually started laughing. And the moment he let go and started giggling at himself, there was a perfect conditioned watermelon sitting on the side of the road.
Wow.
And he was just like, where did that even come from? And so he just said he sat there, he opened up this watermelon, and it was just juicy and in perfectly ripe condition. That was one story. And this was when I was learning about really learning to trust that you are always provided for. And I don't know the men that will be listening to this, but there is a universal field of energy that is always working. And call it God, call it the universe, call it divinity, call it the quantum field, call it what you will. And that energetic field is connected with everything on earth. And I say to people, your desire is someone else's inspire. So anytime you have a desire for something, that message goes out to the universe, and the universe then puts inspiration into someone to create that thing you need, essentially, that thing you desire. So the universe is always working to bring people together in synchronous events. If you've ever, bumped into someone and they've just completely changed your life or sent it on a different direction or helped you in some way, these synchronicities are part of the universal design. And so his other story was he went for a walk with a friend up this big mountain, and he used to wear like sandals, flip-flops, thongs, as you'd call them. And if you're a New Zealander, jandals. And so he was walking up this mountain. He said it was very jagged rocks. And he thought his like sandals, they're not going to make it all the way up and all the way down. And he's like, oh, my feet are going to be cut to ribbons. He was like, let's just keep walking. So him and his friend, they keep walking, and they get to the top of the hill, and he takes them off, and they're hanging on by a thread. And so he throws them away. And they sit on top of this mountain and they talk for a while, and then it's time to go back down. And as he goes to go back down, he was like, oh, my feet. He took a few steps, and hanging from a tree was a pair of boots with the bootlaces over the tree. And he was like, what? Anyway, he got them off, and these were his words. He said they fitted his feet perfectly. They were his size, but not just his size, the actual bottoms where the imprints were of the other person's feet. He's like, they were my feet. You know, they were my boots. So he put them on and he walked back down the mountain. So, yeah, if anyone says I can't do that, I have these commitments, it's like those are all mental limitations. They're not actually the truth of reality, and you're keeping yourself locked in a cage with those beliefs. You're literally locked in a mental cage, which is keeping you stuck in a world that your soul doesn't want to be in.
So good. I love the stories. Thank you, John. And yeah, this is right up my alley. I love this talk. So I can verify what John's saying works. Let's talk about masculine and feminine energies. How do you see those combining, balancing, harmonizing within men?
Yeah, so obviously we have both energies within us. We've got, they're actually the same energy. Masculine and feminine energy are the same energy, but they're two poles of the same thing. So what I mean by that is if you have a magnet, one magnet has a positive aspect and a negative aspect. And the positive and the negative, if you bring them together, they'll pull together, right? So you've got one magnet with a positive and negative, but it's still one magnet. If you break that magnet in half, so now you have two magnets, each magnet will have a positive and a negative. So you can never just get a magnet which is just positive. It's always going to have the magnetism and the repulsion happening. So within you, within me, within any man or woman, you have this energy, and it has two poles, a positive pole and a negative pole. The positive pole is the masculine pole, the negative pole is the feminine pole. So someone who is really masculine, these are like some masculine qualities or traits can be like rigidity, it can be directionality, it can be strength. These are all masculine traits. If you think about a strong masculine man, masculine traits. Now you can get women with those traits as well. That means they are energetically more in the masculine pole, but it doesn't mean they're a man. So more feminine traits would be softness. It would be malleability. It would be the provider or the giver. The positive pole is the taker, the feminine pole is the giver. And so when we see what we really want, an authentic person will be balanced, integrated between both poles. That's the center point. Again, this is all in my free online course, Discover Your Authentic Self, which means that if you're a man and you reject femininity, then you're going to be highly polarized to the masculine. And if you're a man that rejects masculinity, then you're going to be polarized to the feminine. An integrated man will accept both masculinity and femininity. And an integrated man will then be able to sometimes be in the feminine pole and sometimes be in the masculine pole, depending on what the environment, what the scenario dictates. For example, I come from the military. I really back myself in being able to fight someone, essentially. So the masculine pole is fight, the feminine pole is flight. So I would really back myself, but that doesn't mean I walk around looking for fights. There are times where I would go flight, I would run away. So I have the ability to use the masculine energy or the feminine energy. So that in that context, I've integrated the poles. But there are some men out there that are just defensive, that are arrogant, that are only fight, right? And they will eventually get humbled by life because the universe is always trying to bring you into center. And so when it comes to men and the femininity, it is about accepting it. But if you get stuck in it, you're going to meet a really feminine guy that gets walked all over, the nice guy. And there's the saying, nice guys finish last. Well, it's true. It's true. So if you just become the nice guy, and I've done it, then you'll be the people pleaser, you'll be the overgiver, you'll be the one that is insecure in relationships. And until that gets integrated with the positive pole, the masculine pole, you're always going to be stuck in playing out those patterns of behavior. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that is, I guess that's the science of how the masculine and feminine works. And whenever you're polarized, it's good, it can be beneficial for a period of time, but to stay polarized means you're unintegrated. It means you're rejecting the very things that you need to become happier and more joyous.
Yeah, this is great, great breakdown. Thank you, John. Let's explore a bit more about Mr. Nice Guy, because I do see it in the Facebook feed, like, and people that, some men that comment on my posts, like say, oh, I give everything to a woman and, she still left me for some bad boy or whatever.
Yep,
Can you
it's going to
speak
happen.
to men about this Mr. Nice Guy? They have the best of intentions. They think they're doing everything that women want, but they don't get it that maybe it's not what we want, even though we might not say it.
Yeah. So, like magnets, if you put two negatives together, they'll repel each other. And so, if there is a guy who's in his feminine, which is the negative pole, and he's with a woman who's feminine, he's going to repel her because she wants to be soft. She wants to be protected. She wants all of these things. And if he's in the feminine, over giving, over delivering, being soft and squishy, she's not going to feel safe. She's not going to feel safe, right? And she's going to be energetically, like, she's not going to want to have sex with you if you're a pansy. I say that by meaning the negative. If you're in the feminine, the negative pole as a man, she's going to want to have sex with someone in the who's probably egotistical, is arrogant, is strong, is showing all of these masculine qualities. It is a energetic. So this goes even beyond chemical. It is an energetic pull. So yeah, you will always get walked all over. Now, for those Mr. Nice Guys, I've been there. I've been destroyed by women, completely crumbled me, led me into this depression and feelings of unworthiness as well. Which, unworthiness is the feminine pole, overworthiness as well as the masculine pole. So that's the pride aspect. So yes, for the men, the Mr. Nice Guys integrate the opposite, which means, in a nutshell, see the benefit in being a badass. Because at the moment you're going, oh, but they're so mean, but I don't want to treat women like that, but they're so egotistical and arrogant. Yeah, and that has some qualities. That there are some good things within that. It doesn't mean you have to be it 24/7. It just means you need to be able to have those characteristics and traits available to you as and when. So life will always be giving us feedback on how we need to integrate further. And if you're experiencing women that are, if you are people pleasing, if you are getting walked all over by women, if you are, what are some other, yeah, if you're the ones, you've got an attachment to them, then that is a sure sign that you are unintegrated. Someone fully integrated will be not here nor there. Love won't be a thing of, like, I need your love or I need love outside. It'll be a true love is quite freeing. It's really freeing, and it gives your partner freedom, as opposed the opposite is attachment. So yeah, men, if you are on that feminine pole, you need to do some integration work, move more into your masculine pole, and you'll find that you won't get treated like shit anymore. And women will feel safe with you. They will respect you. And that's a huge thing. Yeah, and all it is wounding. All it is wounding from the past. Maybe you had a feminine father. Maybe you were raised by, you know what, we see this a lot in single mums. There are so many single mums these days. They've got feminine energy and they're raising men. And those men are growing up very feminized. And so these men are essentially being programmed to be feminine, and they may not understand how the whole dynamic works, but the universe is saying, hey, you got to do something about this. Maybe the way your upbringing, maybe it wasn't the healthiest, and it's time for you to really relearn. And so that might mean for a period of time being very uncomfortable, breaking down your old belief systems about who you are, about what treating someone right really is, about what women want, and about how you can provide that as a man. And that's the great work. That is the great work, which very few people are willing to do. They'd rather blame, they'd rather justify, they'd rather defend, they'd rather run away and hide, when true courage is the vulnerability to step into going, fuck, I got, I've I got messed up. I got messed up, and I want to do something about that.
Yeah, that's great. I want to touch and clarify on 2 points that you made around egotism and arrogance. Now, my understanding is that there's a healthy version and an unhealthy version. So when you're telling nice guys to be more arrogant and egotistical, can we clarify what healthy ego is and healthy arrogance?
Yeah. So I think I said that they will feel like they're being egotistical and arrogant, or they'll be saying that that guy is egotistical and arrogant. So anytime you're judging someone else in a negative way, that is a sign that the very thing you're rejecting is the very thing you need to do. So in this case, let's say it was egotistical and arrogant. If we have the positive pole and the negative pole, and then we have the center, and we have 10 degrees to the right and 10 degrees to the left from the center. If someone is extremely arrogant and extremely egotistical, they're like way out at number 10. And so that's an extreme version. You don't have to go all the way out there. But you have to start moving in that direction. And what it will feel like for a feminine guy, or a guy in the feminine pole, they even coming to the center, they will feel arrogant, even though they're actually just coming into the center, because they're so used to being it's like they've been gaslit. So they don't know where the middle is. They don't know where right or wrong is. They've got their ideas. So for them to become centered, which is where the healthy version lies, it will feel as if they are becoming egotistical and arrogant, even though they're just coming back to neutral. So when you say the healthy version, there absolutely is. And so the way you would become, like, what does healthy arrogance look like? It would be boundaries. It would be having strong boundaries. It would be knowing what you want and sticking to that, because the feminine energy can be chaotic, and it can test you and it can push your buttons. And if you fold as a man, you've failed the test, because then you've just become the malleable one, and they have become the positive, you've become the negative. So it is staying true to your values, what matters most to you in life, following that purpose. So that could be seen as arrogance, and the woman could literally say, you're just being arrogant. You know what, here's an example. I had a girlfriend, lovely girl, I won't say her name, we're still great friends, and she wanted to move to Melbourne and I wanted to stay on the Gold Coast, and I was like adamant I had to do this for me. I was like, I have to stay here for me. In the past, I've always just done what they wanted to do, because then you get loved and accepted. And I just started sort of personal development, and I was like, nah, I've got to stay true. And she called me stubborn. She's like, you're so stubborn, arrogant. Really? Those are just projections of her, because she was stubborn and arrogant, right? So it was me being in my center was actually seen by others even as stubborn or arrogance. So, but that was very healthy. What I did was really, really healthy, and we ended up splitting up and maintaining a fantastic friendship. So yes, healthy arrogance would look like boundaries. Healthy ego, which is, I would say healthy, healthy ego would be the same. The ego is kind of, it can be very defensive, defending yourself. It could be sticking up for yourself when you need, that could be a healthy ego, is like, hey, what you're doing is not okay. The way you're treating me is actually pretty awful, and I'm not going to stand for that. So yes, you don't have to become an asshole to be a masculine man. Um, when it's taken to the extreme though, level 10, that's what it looks like. So if you want an example of that, you know, those real like tough guy, egotistical, that's when it gets, that's a unintegrated guy who is survived based on having to be tough and strong, but really deep down is had immense shame at some point in their life, and they've overcompensated with immense. Look at I don't know if you know Andrew Tate. Do you know Andrew Tate? Yep. So perfect example. I actually have got I really respect what he's doing, and he's got a lot to share. He's a very intelligent guy, but this is a guy who is, there would have, I can guarantee you, at some point in his life, he experienced immense shame. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy, right? And that pain that's being hit by the stick has driven him, number one, he becomes a world champion fighter. Now, why would you do that? Because you're literally protecting yourself and becoming strong and then dominating other people. Why would you need to do that? Because you don't feel safe, you don't feel worthy, you don't feel good enough. So that's his first layer of defense was, I'm just going to just become such a great fighter, and then no one can mess with me. His next layer of defense was, I'm just going to make tons of money, right? I'm just going to have tons of money, and then I'm going to become, so everything he's done has been external. Now I'm going to have the cars and the chicks, all of those things, all external, because deep down internally, so much pain. And I feel like he has the maturity to admit that. And I don't know, I don't feel like this is very hard for a lot of people. Does he have the maturity to let all of it go again? Does he have the maturity to let the money go, to let the all of the things that have built his worthiness and his status? Does he have the maturity to let them go? Because that, I believe, is when that's when you're centered, and that's when you're in a healthy, integrated male role model. Right now, he is unintegrated, masculine, but it's good for the guys, like it's good for level 1 guys who are maybe a little bit feminine. Maybe they've been raised by a woman and they're like, fuck, I need to get my masculinity. Go and see that dude, because he's going to get you your masculinity. Just don't stay there, because if you stay there, then you've gone from the negative to the positive, and what we really want to do is neutralize, come into center.
Right. Yeah. Now let's talk about money, because some things that you brought up now about money. So I'd like some clarity. So there's those, obviously, the high achiever who want to earn. And as you said, like Andrew Tate, maybe it's an external, thing to cover unworthiness. And then you've got the spiritual, or, the guy that goes and lives in a cave and he's like, I'm not going to touch money for 15 years. What's that happy medium for you? I mean, when does striving for money become unhealthy? And at what level does a spiritual person able to have a comfortable, luxurious life? What's your feelings
Beautiful
around
question.
this?
I'll happily answer this. So again, if could I share my screen with you and show you something? Because it would
Great.
make you, I literally have it open on my
Oh,
screen.
I probably have to do something now. I've got to learn how to do that. I've never done it before. Can you do it? Shall I
No,
pause and we'll figure this out?
if you click participants, where it says participants
Yeah.
at the bottom, click on that and it will pop up with me and you, and then click on more and then make me co-host. Is that there?
I'm going to pause because I haven't
Okay.
got that. We're back.
Okay, so I'll just share this with you because this will give people a visual as well, and this will make a lot of sense. So let me move this out the way. Let me just close down these client forms. Right. Okay, so no. Yes. Okay, so we're talking about the positive pole and the negative pole. Here's the positive pole, here's the negative pole. Let's look at money. We're talking about abundance. So the person in the negative pole, they are in lack and they will say never enough. There's never enough money. Go to the positive pole, greed, and there's still never enough. The person in the middle lives in abundance. So we said that Tate, as an example, he's on the positive pole. Greed, never enough. It's just why? Because it makes him feel good enough. This is the pole of pride. This person, lack, never enough. Why? Because they're rejecting, more than likely rejecting money, right? Oh, money, because what they're seeing is they're seeing people like this and go, money doesn't make you happy, therefore money is bad, right? Then they're over here going, fuck, I have no money now. So this is all part of my Discover Your Authentic Self course. It's completely free. People can go through it. So absolutely there is a happy medium. And this is what happens. Money is a means to an end, right? Having all the money in the world means nothing if you can't spend it. You need money to spend. So someone in lack is going to overcompensate with greed. Again, we've got the positive and negative pole. Someone who is in their center, in their authentic self, they are quite simply going to do what they love. Now, when you're doing what you love, you are unique. So that means no one else can do it. You are in your genius, and you are in a very high vibration, and you're loving life, and you're in flow. And money actually doesn't matter. It's not like it's not like you're, because if you go, oh my God, I need money, all of a sudden you've gone into lack. So money's not even on your mind. You're just doing what you love. And then you essentially, you build a business out of love, not because you need money. You build it because you live in a civilization where that's how we do commerce right now. And you, again, it's the horse and the cart analogy. Someone in lack is going to put the cart before the horse. They're like, I need money because money will make me happy. Someone who puts the horse before the cart will be like, I need to be happy because being happy will, well, that's all. Once I'm happy, I'm done. I'm like, life's complete. And so then money becomes a byproduct of you just being yourself. So spiritual people will tend to go to the negative pole. They'll be the people pleasers, the overgivers, the doing things for others. They want to save the planet. They want all of these things. That's the negative pole. And they reject the positive pole. But it's about the integration of both poles, and then you get to be totally abundant. And you feel abundance in every cell of your body. It's not a mental concept. It is a state of being. And you know, it feels like bliss. It feels like peace. It feels like joy. And then all of your needs are met, right? Intrinsically. And so if money comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it doesn't affect your level of joy, or as I call it, your soul condition. Yeah.
Yeah, such a good breakdown, John. Yeah, and again, it's I can totally validate that journey, you know, through my own experience. All right, we've got about half an hour left. What, from your opinion, needs to be brought into this conversation around men, masculinity? I just want something from your knowledge, awareness, experience that I haven't touched on yet.
Yeah. For the guys that are, we've talked a little bit about the positive, the negative pole, and you know, the nice guys, the overgivers, and what I really want to speak into is the opposite pole, because if you're on the negative pole, you're probably going to be seeking help. You're probably going to be open. You're probably going to be honest with what's happening. If you're in the positive pole, you're going to be on the defensive pole, and you're going to be not admitting things, not being truthful. And that's the pole I've lived most of my life. And so what I want to say to those men is, you're going to be trapped in a life of void of true meaning and fulfillment. Because when you're in either of the poles, you're going to have these vice behaviors, these addictions that play out, which provide short-term gratification and short-term happiness. And my calling is to anyone that is a high achiever, or, you know, in that dominating, competitive, masculine pole, to say, I know life feels good, like can feel good there. Because in the negative pole, life can feel pretty shit quite often, because you feel never enough. You feel like you usually don't have money. You feel small, contracted. You don't feel safe in the world. That feels yuck. But what can happen is people build up their ego to the opposite end, the positive pole, and they actually feel safe and secure with their money, with their success, with their accolades. And so it actually becomes a trap because not many people want to give that up. And that's why I said I don't think Tate will be able to evolve past where he is now until he can surrender that. And that would be really fucking hard because all of that attention, all of that stardom, well, everyone's like, well, he's really living his life. But if you look closely, he's been in prison recently. You have no idea what the quality of his relationship is with his spouse. I don't think he has children. I'm sure he's talked about. He said his way of having children would be to go to South America, bang up a chick, plant your seed, and then she can raise them. And so that's what he said about that. Everybody can change, but essentially it becomes a trap. If you're in the positive pole of high achiever of success, it becomes a trap. And so until you are really honest with yourself and you go, you know what, should life be this hard? Because it will feel you'll be in a state of, your nervous system will be switched on a lot. You'll be experiencing burnout. Your nervous system will be in fight mode. You'll experience health issues. And health issues vary from person to person. Genetically, it could be, again, look at Tate, receding hairline. It could become more chronic. Cancers and heart attacks. If you're in the positive pole, usually heart attacks. If you're in the negative pole, usually cancers. And if you're ready for like a really wholesome, pure way of life, which is not in this forceful state of always trying to stay ahead of something or always trying to stay in control, that's what it would be. It's like you feel like you have to control everything, and you want a more integrated, wholesome, loving, peaceful, joyous, inspiring, easy, like it doesn't have to be a grind, it shouldn't be a grind, then this is a sign to start looking into what that might look like. And maybe finding some new mentors that are 1 or 2 steps ahead that can help you let go of this facade that you've built, so that you can live a more pure, more integrated, more joyous existence. It really does come down to, I love that word, joy. And I was driving this morning and I thought, joyous, like, what does that mean? And I thought, justified on your own unique self, meaning that it is not about anything outside of you. It is just this love you have with yourself. So then it's very hard to be triggered by things going wrong around you because you're just in your joy. And that's a beautiful way to live, where you're not attached to things, where you're not resenting things, when you're just in a beautiful state. And believe me, I'm not perfect. I'm not there all the time. It's a work in progress. But it's a very fulfilling journey.
Yeah, and it's one when you do, create this inner joy, no one can take it from you. So you lose your fear. Whereas if you build up an external kingdom, even if you have insurance, maybe there'll be an earthquake. You move into a beautiful house. Maybe there's a pedophile next door. Nothing external can guarantee long-term our joy. So when we cultivate it inwards, it's such a blissful place because no one, whatever happens, the earthquake or the pedophile, whatever it is, can take that joy from us because we know how to navigate ourselves. This is beautiful. What's happening with, what would you say with your professional experience is the main issue going on with men now?
As in, what's men's main issue now?
Yes. What are they struggling with the most?
I think probably what we were touching on, like for the masculine men, it is it's so different. They feel like they have to always be in control. They feel they take on men take so much responsibility for the family, for everything. And yeah, men are carrying a lot of weight on their shoulders, and maybe this is biased, so I'm always welcome for a reality check. I just know a lot of men who have had their lives destroyed by women and the legal system, and I'm sure it happens in the other way as well. And I know domestic violence. Well, I don't know, but I'm assuming there's a lot of domestic violence towards women and things. But I really see men working their freaking asses off, trying to keep everything under control. Um, and that takes a lot of energy to maintain, and that energy's got to come from somewhere. And these men are kind of just, yeah, they don't need to try so hard. And it's that, if we look at the macro view, it's like, what drives the world? It really is fear. And so that drives competitiveness, and competitiveness drives separation. And that to me, that's a weird concept of what like separation. Aren't we all one big global family? What's what's with the whole separation side of things? But then you have to face the reality is there are some people out there that are doing some pretty nasty things, and maybe you want to be competitive when you're in a world with those people. And so because the whole world is mainly competitive, these men are competing, and competitiveness takes energy. It takes energy. And so yeah, these I don't I'm answering this question terribly. I feel like the main thing is it's not just for men. Everybody just needs to, everybody can do whatever they want. It would be really beautiful if everybody integrated and came back to their center, because then we wouldn't have so much chaos. And I say it like this: the world, I think if you're honest, there's chaos happening, which is fine. Chaos leads to order, so that's okay. So if you want order in the world, you come down a level from the global scale. Well, is there chaos at the national level? If you look at America, it's like, yes, you've got the left and the right. We're at extremes right now, massive polarization. And then if you go, okay, my nation to be more harmonious. Okay, well, there's people that make up your nation. So really, people need to be harmonious. And then so it's like, okay, well, look at your family. Is your family harmonious? It's like, nah, not really. Okay, cool. Well, individuals make up your family. So are the individuals harmonious? And the question is, are you harmonious? And most people will say no, right? And so it's like, if you want to clean up the world, clean up yourself. All of the war happening in the world, all of the chaos, all of the drama, all of the separation, all of the the global agenda, and the right, the wrong, the good and the bad, and all of that separation, it starts with you actually cleaning up your own house, yourself. So whenever someone complains about anything in the world, I'll just say, where's this reflected inside you? Because that's it. That's all you have to do, is just keep cleaning up yourself. So if you're ever complaining about anything, whereabouts are you displaying the exact same thing in your own internal life? So men or women, if you want to make changes in your life and the world and become more happier, all of it, and you want to be healthier, you've got health issues or any of it, it all comes down to your own internal integration. That's it. Nothing else will get you there.
Yes, so good. I love this. What are your practices when you want to get in touch with your heart or the inner man? Like, what do you do to physically or emotionally or mentally to bring back to yourself?
Yeah. So I say I've got 5 Ps that really influence your soul condition, which is how centered you are and how elevated you are. And one of them is purpose. Like, are you following your purpose, and do you have a future that's bright because you get to do what you love? The next one is perception, which I'll talk a lot about because that's the biggest one. So there's purpose, perception. There's your physiology, which is the foods you're eating. If you're yeah, like your hormonal side of things. There's that aspect, and then there's your physical environment and the physical. So I say there are really four P's, but within physical environment there are three P's within that: people, places, and processes. And so we're peeing everywhere. Um, all of those have to be in order for you to be in your center, but the most important one above all is your perceptions. So for me, it's meditation. And I've got my own meditative practices that um, I do for myself and I teach others. And, your sight connects you to the outside world. Your smell, your taste, your hearing, your physical touch, it connects you to the outside world. And as long as you're connected to the outside world, you are not going to be fully connected to the inside world. So meditation allows you to close off this, kind of close off this so I don't use music, close it off, close my mouth, sit on a chair so I'm not, physically being stimulated. And it allows me to go into the inside world, which is the operating system for everything in our lives. So once you're in that inside world, the reason we go to the positive or the negative pole is through emotion. Again, if you want to learn the details of this, I highly recommend going through my free online course. But emotion is what puts us into these positive or negative poles. So by meditation and really coming to terms with our emotions, and dissolving them through the processes I go through, that brings me back into my center. And so people, excitement, for example, is a polarized state. When someone's excited, they're not in their center. When someone is depressed, they're not in their center. And so a lot of people try and live a life that's exciting and they wonder why it's unfulfilling. It will keep running into, like, they just need more dopamine and more excitement to feel good and to feel stimulated. That's not an authentic state of being. That's not your center. So to come into your heart, it shouldn't be. I talk about, like, if anyone's ever been to Tony Robbins and you're all pumped up, those are elevated feelings. There's no doubt about it. And you're in your body. Fantastic. This is the P of physiology. So you're getting your body moving. It absolutely contributes. But you're always going to reset yourself back to your baseline emotional tone or your baseline soul condition until you actually move through these emotions. And that includes excitement. And so when you're actually centered, look at Elon Musk, for example. To me, he's very centered. He's never like extremely emotional, right? And very high level of consciousness, and very intelligent. But if someone's always being excited, again, you're polarized. That's not your true self. If you're sad, if you're grieving, if you're lazy or apathetic, not your true self. So my process is meditation and dissolving these emotions so that I'm left with, answer this question for me. If you had no comparisons, judgments, expectations, or attachments, what would you feel?
Just your self-truth, like
Yeah, that's it.
uniqueness. Yeah.
You'd be in your heart. And that's what happens. Your emotions put you in your head. If someone is an overthinker, it's because there is so much fear in their body. They don't know what to do. So all of that energy goes to their head. They're like, oh my God, what shall I do? Shall I do this? And I don't know what to do. You'll never know. You'll never know until you clear the emotion of fear. And so when you clear that out and you're left with your emotion is the head, clear the emotion and automatically you'll come into your heart. And that's where abundance is. That's where all of like this beauty and the wonder of the world opens up. So it really is through my meditative practices that I center myself and open my heart.
This is beautiful. Probably got about 10 minutes left, but let's talk about the heart that you brought up. And I love this. So, talk to men, please, about the heart. You've given them a great gateway now through meditation to get in touch with that. Can you recommend anything else? Because a lot of men say, "Oh, I've tried meditating, it's not for me." Or do you suggest they stick with it? What do you say to those men?
Yes, so I have been in your shoes. If you're like meditation is not for me, I can guarantee you this is why. Because there is a voice in your head that won't shut up. I can guarantee it. So again, I urge people go through my free course. It explains all of this. Body, mind, soul, right? Your body is your emotion, your mind is your thought and thinking, and your soul is your knowing, your authentic self, your center. When your head won't stop talking, and you've got the voice in your head, the voice in your head is polarized. It's always going to be right, wrong, good, bad, should, shouldn't, black, white, yes, no. So your mind is always polarized. So meditation is the practice of getting beyond your mind. But what a lot of people do is because their mind won't shut the hell up, they're like, oh, this isn't for me. And I did that too. But really, that was just one of these sabotaging voices going, nah, let's go do something. Oh, this is unproductive, right? And so again, that's the these voices, they're patterns or they're parts of ourselves that are trying to stay in control to try and get our needs met, our needs for safety, our needs for love, our needs for connection, our needs for excitement and stimulation. So I get it. I even listened to an interview with Tony Robbins once, and he said the same. He's like, meditation's not for me. And I was like, oh, it's interesting. And I said it too, until I experienced so much pain in my life where I was like, there has to be something beyond this. And so I put a huge amount of effort into my meditation through like this episode of depression I was having, because I knew that any feeling is just it's not who we truly are. It's an emotion, right? And those are based off of our beliefs and what trigger us and our comparisons, our expectations, our judgments, and our attachments. And so I went, no, this depression is a feeling I'm experiencing based on, I call it the mental cage: comparisons, attachments, judgments, expectations. It's this mental cage I'd built. So I was like, okay. So I worked through those, mainly expectations. As I was saying earlier, the gap between your expectations and your reality is disappointment. And so I worked through all of that. And I started to notice the voices in my head going, you're not good enough, or you should be doing this or that. And I was like, why should I be doing this? Oh, because we're bored. Let's go do it because we're bored.
Yes.
And I would sit and dissociate and go like, well, that's my head speaking. That's not the truth, right? These are just, my teachers, my parents, my other mentors I've had in the past. And I finally got to a point where I could recognize the difference between me and my mind. And that is when meditation really got exciting, because all of a sudden you're no longer controlled by the voice in your head. And so to any of the men that are saying it, believe me, I have been in your shoes. I have said the exact same things, and it's like learning to ride a bike. You will fall off, and that's all. You've just fallen off. You've fallen off. Get back on, try it again. Maybe learn from someone new. A different style of it, a different style of meditation. I really weave inner child healing and meditation together. And so, because that's what the voice is. It's your wounded inner child wanting something externally. So yeah, to those men, I would say there's more available to you, and woman. If that voice in your head is stopping you meditating or won't shut up, there is more available to you.
I love that. This is fascinating, John. Can you expand any more on that difference between mind and self? How did you recognize that?
Yes. So I say when your mind is quiet, you'll know yourself. I would say yourself is a feeling. It's not a voice. It's a feeling. And you know what? Most people would call it intuition. A lot of people think that their intuition is this voice in their head. And sometimes your intuition can, my intuition doesn't have a voice. Okay. If there's ever a voice, it is the mind. So my intuition is a feeling of, um, contraction or expansion, which is kind of like a yes or a no. And so the true self, again, I'll keep saying this. This is why I built the free course, because it's all explained in there. You've got transcendental feelings. So I list kind of like 4 negative feelings, 4 positive feelings, and then 8 transcendental feelings. So how do you know when you're beyond the mind? You'll feel peace, you'll feel presence, you'll be present with life, you'll be abundant, joy, bliss, love, true love, not romantic love, and appreciation, gratitude, acceptance. All of these feelings, which I don't call emotions. Emotions are like quite strong, sadness or anger. They've got like your body changes its physiology kind of thing. It's quite intense. But these feelings of peace and presence and power and joy, they're very light. They're very light feelings. So that when you'll know. You'll just be like, it's like a feeling of coming home into wholeness and completeness. So that is when you know. And it's taken me, I really started meditating, it's not that long ago, probably 4 or 5, I would say 5 years ago. Before that, I did visualization work, which is still very powerful, very powerful. But true meditation, it's taken about 4 years to get to a point, and I'm far from great at it, but to get to a point where I can find my center. Sometimes it takes an hour. You know what? Yesterday I had a coffee, and I drink maybe 1 coffee every 3 months. And I had a coffee yesterday. I got a lot of work done. But in the evening I felt, because coffee will push you to the positive pole, right? That's why everyone drinks coffee. It pushes them to the positive pole. I can do it. I'm a champion. I'm the best. And so I recommend, anyway, I recommend a lot of things. But essentially I had a coffee yesterday and I felt myself in the positive pole. I was very excited about life. And I went, okay, this is not true. What I'm experiencing right now is not true. It is an up state. So before bed, I went to meditate. I was like, I'm just going to meditate and bring myself to center. And I really struggled. Because the caffeine was in me. And so it took me like an hour, and I pulled myself down a little bit, but I wouldn't say I was in total center. And then a bird, I don't know if you saw in my story, a bird flew into the glass window, and I went and picked the bird up. It was very not well, and I put it in a little sort of cage in my bedroom overnight and let it out this morning. But going to tend to that animal helped me come into my center more. And then by the time I actually went to bed, I set the intention. I was like, okay, I'm not fully centered, but I'm going to set the intention that tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be, in my center. And off I went to sleep, and I woke up and felt very, very centered today.
Yeah, I love that awareness around coffee, being really, like so many people addicted to coffee, but that breaks it down as to why maybe, it isn't healthy. And I love then that the bird, the compassion and the nurturing for the bird brought you back into towards the opposite pole. And I loved what you said, because this is my barometer on life too, the expansion and the contraction of the heart. That's my guidance system. What opens your heart? What closes your heart? How does that feel in a man? Like, men are like, what? Wait, what? Is it that simple?
It feels good. And for 2 reasons. One, it just feels good because it feels good. But 2, I do like being a leader. And it is a privilege to be able to lead, but it's taken me a lot of pain to get here, because I rejected it I remember having a conversation with a woman a couple of years ago saying, you know, oh, it's not very manly, da da da. And this again led to some of the depression because I was repressing parts of myself. And so it's been very, very painful letting go of those beliefs that it's not very manly. But I kept reading, researching, and learning from people who were in a beautiful state of being, and they all said the same thing. And so I kind of was like, well, okay, maybe I'll be less manly. If that brings me happiness, let's do that. And it's actually brought me to a beautiful spot where I do get to feel good because of the when you're in your center, it just feels good. But also now I do get to lead, and I love leading. And this is what we were talking about earlier: is like a high achiever doesn't have to stop being a high achiever, but it's where is that high achievement coming from? Is it coming from, oh, I need to be a leader because that will validate my existence? Or does it come from, I get to lead because I've done the hard work and I actually enjoy it and I get to help people?
Yes, yeah, and leading from that experience, amazing. I'm sure we could go on and on and on. We'll have to have you back on Man Speak at some point, but it is time up for today. What an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, John. Please let people know where they can find you and touch on this free course again because it sounds amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook predominantly at John Templeton Official.
Okay,
That's, yeah, pop that in. The free course is called Discover Your Authentic Self. I highly recommend doing it. You can get there through the link, in my Instagram, or uh, it'll be on my Facebook page, probably not my personal profile, but if you go to my Facebook page, which is John Templeton Official. I've also got some free workshops coming up over the next few months. So, I mean, you're invited, everyone's invited to those. I've got one in 2 weeks, then one a month for the next 3 weeks, which is diving into, it's called the Soul Conditioning Workshop, which is where we dive deep into, I teach people my meditation practices during that workshop. Yeah, again, it's completely free. So come and join the fun. Yeah, come and walk this path. This is the other thing. I need more people, because talking about connection and separation of the planet, I'm walking the path. I'm looking for other people to walk the path with me. And in the future, I'm going to be looking for people to facilitate the soul conditioning process for me. And they can build their own business out of it so that they can build a business doing essentially what I do as well, but for other people. So I need people.
Sounds so good. And you're based on the Gold Coast. Have you got anything online? You've got your course online and you've got your workshops in person on the Gold Coast. Is that right?
No, the online course is free. That's online. The workshops are online, and then I've got the authenticity retreat in Bali, which is in person in May.
Oh, well, there you go. No excuses for anyone wherever you are in the world. That's what I wanted to focus on. Amazing. Wow. What's your final message for men, please, John?
Um, I I know how hard it can be, to the point of wanting to exit life multiple times over the last number of years. And at the core, we are alone in this journey. We really, it's just, we are with ourselves, although other people are out there. And so it is critical, men, that we come to know ourselves, because it is only from that place that we can overcome any of you know the struggles we're facing, the stress we're facing, the heavy weight that we carry on, of responsibility. And so, yeah, don't be scared to step into this work of integration.
So good. Thank you, John. Amazing.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much for your time, your energy, your wisdom. Certainly a beautiful asset for our Heart Warrior series.
Thank you so much for having me, and yeah, thank you everybody for listening to me for this long.
Amazing. Thanks, everyone. If you could like, share, subscribe, get the message out. John, if I could just keep you on a moment, please, and we'll get a title for the show. Because if people don't know, I ask the men to choose their own title for the show, and that just adds the individuality to their episode and makes it all about the men. So, bye.